Hello, hello, and good morning. Happy Tuesday, May the 27th. I always have to check the dates. Thank you for tuning in. I am Manila Chan. That over there is Ted Rall. You are tuned into the Ted Manila Information Show, TMI Show for short, because we bring you way too much information. We are live Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. So please be sure to like and follow this show. It really would help our the algorithms if you guys at least hit that like button, the thumbs up, wherever you're streaming this program, and you'll help us that way. And also, if you can become a Rumble Premium subscriber, you'll have access to our show and a bunch of other great Rumble content creators with no commercials. And it's content that can only be seen if you are a Rumble Premium subscriber. So we'll ask you to help us out that way if you're in the position to do so. The Ted Manila Information Show is going to start right after this. I'll tell you what we're talking, what's on deck. Surprisingly, kind of a slow news day for a Tuesday. It's for us, effectively it's a Monday. But we will be talking about Trump allegedly trying to wash his hands from the whole Ukraine ordeal. We'll talk about Gaza and supposedly Trump getting tired of that as well. And of course, the slap heard around the world. We're talking about Emmanuel Macron and his much older wife, who I've got comments about for that one, Ted. And of course, our main topic we're going to talk about, which is something that's been on our minds for weeks, is that there was a new study that came out about accents in the United States, and specifically the Southern accent. We're talking about the Deep South. Think Bill Clinton, right? And not Hillary's put on fake accent. We're talking about real Southern accents because, of course, we have our own Southerner on this show. But there's a real
as every show should have.
Every show should have a Southerner. But there's a study about, saying that the Southern accent is literally gone with the wind. And personally, I'm kind of sad about that news, but we'll get into that on the back half of the show. So we have a little bit of quasi news. So stay tuned. That is what is coming up after the Jaws.
Thanks, Manila. As Manila says, Donald Trump is kind of sick of trying to negotiate peace in Ukraine. Because after all, it's been months. So, the president's attention is wandering. So Trump is
not the first day, Ted. It didn't happen the first day.
No, that's true. I'm not a psychologist, but I play one on the radio. It does sound to me like this man is a classic case of ADHD. But anyway, he says that he's not satisfied with how fast things are moving. He, however, doesn't want to yield to pressure to impose more sanctions against Russia. So here's basically where things are going. The New York Times reported that during his conversation with Putin, Trump shared his impression that Putin thought he was winning the war and would press his advantage. The officials who know about this also said Trump made clear he had no intention of putting pressure, much less harsh economic sanctions, on Russia. He said essentially, I'm out. At the same time, the Times did not say whether Trump, who has been skeptical of sending aid to Ukraine and has yet to approve new assistance to Ukraine, might be willing to resume military assistance there. Trump, who described European conflict as Europe's war, said he was shocked by the Russians' unwillingness to change their key terms for resolving it. This, according to the New York Times. This story has a lot of the hallmarks of fake news, I will say, though. Russia has insisted that any sustainable peace has to include a neutrality of Ukraine. In other words, they agree not to be an enemy of Russia, demilitarization, denazification, and recognition of the new territorial reality on the ground. A separate report in the Journal, the Wall Street Journal, says that Trump is frustrated with the peace process, may walk away entirely. The Journal says that actually Trump is thinking about new sanctions, although no decision's been made. This came after Trump got pissed off about Russia firing missiles and drones into Ukraine over the weekend. He said Trump has gone absolutely crazy, all caps crazy. Russia explained themselves by saying that those recent strikes, right, that Putin has gone crazy. And the Russians say that the reason that they did those strikes over the weekend was that they targeted Ukrainian military installations in retaliation for a spike in Ukrainian drone raids into Russian territory. Russian officials say that they're intercepting Russian UAVs, which are drones, almost unmanned aerial vehicles, almost every day, and that they've intercepted nearly 100 a day, saying that strikes are meant to derail the peace process. The Ukrainians are trying to derail the peace process. And so that's what they're doing here. I don't know, with Trump, there's always a lot more posturing than there is even with the average politician. So he has said very clear. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that he mostly blames the Ukrainians for provoking the war. But he also doesn't want this to go on. I mean, I think the one thing, he's mostly irritated by Ukraine, but I think he's a little frustrated with the Russians for not moving as quickly as he would like. He would like to put this behind him, move on to his next phase of his campaign for the Nobel Peace Prize, and it's just taking a little longer than he'd like. I think this is a resolvable thing. I mean, given the fact that the U.S. holds all the cards, the Ukrainians can't keep fighting without continued U.S. support. So, even though if the Europeans step in, it wouldn't be nearly enough. So I think, basically in the end, Trump can just say to the Ukrainians, listen, here's the deal, sign here, shut the fuck up. But I don't know why he's reluctant to do that. I mean, I assume he's getting lots of pressure from deep staters, but I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
So one of the things I noticed, and I think it's very notable, the mainstream media is going all out, showing this one little clip of Donald Trump saying, he's gone absolutely crazy. He's bonkers. He's nuts. But then there's a follow-up question that a separate reporter throws out at Trump and says, well, Mr. President, do you think this Putin's reaction had anything to do with the fact that there are reports coming in that as Putin was leaving Kursk, because remember this weekend, Vladimir Putin made a surprise visit to the Kursk Oblast, which they've recaptured and smoothed things out there for the Russian side. Putin shows up and he leaves on his helicopter, and allegedly his chopper was met with some Ukrainian drones, which were then taken down. And she said, do you think it had anything to do with that? And Trump said, oh, I hadn't heard of that. But if that's what happened, then I guess that makes sense, or something to that effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Plain spoken. So no media is showing that. I mean, it's incredibly hard to find that soundbite. I mean, if I can dig it up, but now that I think of it, I can dig it up. But that's effectively what he said on the tarmac, right here on this video, where he's on the tarmac in New Jersey, talking to the media, and he actually said that. He's like, oh, like he reacted like this was fresh news to him, and he said if that's what happened, then he gets why Vladimir Putin would lash out that way. But the funny thing to me was Donald Trump seems shocked that the Russians aren't changing their position on their demands for whatever concessions it is that they've demanded since 2022, Ted. The Russians aren't, they're not fucking around. They told the world from the get-go, this is the red line. Don't do this. Don't do it. Don't do it for 7 years and beyond. I mean, it's a lot longer, but they got real serious in the last couple of years before the SMO began. And they said, this is the red line. Do not do it. Well, the U.S. went and did it in this proxy war. And then from the onset of the SMO, they outlined exactly what it was that they were aiming to achieve. And that hasn't changed in 3 years. Why is Donald Trump surprised by this? The only reason I can see Donald Trump being shocked at how stubborn the Russians are being is that he continually gets really bad intel from whatever neocon is chirping in his ear. Maybe, the Lindsey Graham types is the best I can guess. But nothing has changed, Ted. In 3 years, the Russians aren't like out there with new demands like, oh, now we want to go to Poland. Now we want to go, we want to go into Austria. Nothing has changed. There's nothing that's changed since March of 2022.
Yeah, but you know what if Trump really is confused by the Russian posture, and I actually believe that he is, having, read everything there is to read about Donald Trump in preparation for writing my little biography of him, he loves to wheel and deal. And his approach is always to make maximalist demands and then say, okay, and then settle for something less, right? By the way, I don't necessarily think he's wrong. That seems like a pretty effective method for negotiating in general. But that's his approach. And so, but, the Russians, they didn't do that here. And in fact, that's not really their culture. They literally just came to the table. It was kind of like the old ads for buying the Saturn. There's no negotiation for a Saturn. The price is the price. You pay the sticker price and you walk, and you either buy the car or you don't buy the car, but that's the price. It's like going into the Apple store. You can't negotiate for the computer. The laptop costs what it costs. So that's how it was for the Russians. They said, look, we have these 4 basic demands. These are them. They haven't changed throughout. And like now that the rubber's hitting the road in these peace negotiations, Trump's like, well, wait a minute, you were kind of kidding, right? It's like, no, we weren't kidding. This is what we've been saying all along. I think it's a cultural difference between someone who's basically says what they do what they say, and they mean what they mean what they say, and they say what they mean. That's Vladimir Putin, and someone like Trump, who that's not. And I don't mean to insult Trump here, but that's not really his method of negotiating, right?
No, he negotiates like a New York real estate guy. I mean, it's the same as a car deal, barring the Saturn or barring like going to CarMax where there is no negotiation. It's a different kind of car dealership experience. But when you otherwise go into a car dealership, there's the sticker price, and that is like the starting point of the haggle, right? And the dealership is going to come back with, okay, here's the sticker price. Here's 60 months at $787.34. Oh, you want the monthly payment to go down? Okay, how about $694 for 72 months? And you realize the sticker price hasn't changed or whatever, and you start negotiating. The dealership is going to come back with big numbers. You're going to come back with saying, I want 10 grand off the sticker price. That's how Donald Trump operates on foreign policy. He thinks that's how this works. That is not how this works. It's going to operate like CarMax. It is going to operate like the Apple Store. You want the iPhone? Putin is the Apple Store. Putin says, this is what we need to achieve. This is what we need. If you want us to stop, this is what we need. Period.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump has no idea. Like, I don't think he's ever set foot into the Apple Store, Ted. I mean, somebody else does it for him. Donald Trump doesn't live. He's ultra rich. He doesn't live in the real world. He doesn't know.
I don't think he has an iPhone, by the way. I think he has some shitty like Android.
What? I feel like he's an iPhone person.
No. I think it's been. I had a friend of mine who blew up like a picture of him on the phone and pointed out the specific type of shitty Android that he had. He might have an iPhone now.
Really?
But yeah, I think he's a shitty Android kind of guy.
Well, either way, he's a rich.
And by the way, for people who
store.
are listening, who do and watching, who do use Androids, yes, your phone sucks. Sorry.
Well, Trump is a rich guy, and he, when you operate in the real world, when you're regular people like you and I, Ted, things are negotiable. Like when you go to like a farmer's market, okay, you can negotiate, but you don't walk into Safeway and go to the cashier and say, so the pound of strawberries,
$5.99 is a little high. Yeah, how about $2.99?
Will you take $2.99?
Like, you'll take it. And if you don't, a bunch of gangsters are going to come and just shoplift it for free. So you might as well sell them to me for $3.
So that's what Donald Trump doesn't get. That Vladimir Putin is the house, is the store, is the Apple store, is Safeway. Vladimir Putin controls what is going to happen next.
Now, obviously, there has
like
to be some negotiating. I mean, and this is where, look, Russia also has to get, make some. They have to, we have to understand the Russians. The Russians have to understand us, and I think they understand us better than we understand them. I think they know that, like, if you're Trump, you have to tell Putin, look, you got to give me something. I've got to be able to come home and say I'm the master deal maker and I got something out of you. Otherwise, like, it's not going to work for me. And so, that's something the Russians have to understand. And I do think there are things that the Russians can give up here. Demilitarization, I think, is the one. It's really the most unrealistic request at this point from the Russians. I mean, you're just not going to be able to insist at this stage that Ukraine become completely demilitarized like Greenland.
The U.S. defanged Japan after World War II. They've only recently begun getting their military.
And if Russia had dropped 2 nuclear bombs on Ukraine, they'd probably be in a position to make a similar demand. But that hasn't happened here yet, right? So hopefully it never will. Okay, but the point is, I mean, you can't compare the scope of the. Look, Ukraine's losing. But Japan was completely and totally defeated, ruthlessly eradicated, its cities leveled to the ground. It was crushed. It was destroyed. Right, Ukraine hasn't been destroyed.
But it can be. It can be.
Okay, as a student of history, Manila.
Iskander missiles, they have these hypersonic.
Agreed. But Manila, until lots of things can happen. But
the point is, they're refraining from doing that. What is it going to take for the West to understand that the Russians are taking actually kid gloves to what it is that's happening there?
It's not going to work, because let me just tell you. So there was thousands of years ago.
Do they want Putin to completely obliterate Ukraine? Is that what it's going to take?
So listen, you and I can both see the future, right? But these people can't. So there was a period during which there was so much warfare between ancient peoples like the Hittites and the Assyrians that at a certain point they decided it was too damaging to both sides to keep fighting. So what they would do instead is they would basically game out the war that would happen. So they would assemble in battle and they'd line up, and then an auditor would count how many soldiers, how many weapons each side had. And then they'd say, well, given this situation in this battle, this side would have won. Therefore, we're not going to have the fight. Everyone's just going to go home to their families. But we're going to basically act as if we'd had this battle and you had lost, and you're going to give up whatever, this amount of gold, or you're going to give this territory or whatever to the other side. And we're all going to go home. That's really the mature way to do things, but that's not the way we do things, okay? We have to play it out to its logical conclusion. Everyone the loser has to be destroyed, actually destroyed. It's not enough to be able to see.
It has to be zero sum.
It's like Joe Biden. You could see in 2020 that he was suffering from dementia, but not until after 4 years, the dropping out, the disaster in the Democratic Party, and the Jake Tapper book, do Democrats start to wonder, maybe we shouldn't have done that. It's maybe. Well, until they lose election after election after election, they won't get it.
And that's exactly it. Donald Trump is getting bad advice from some neocon warmonger that is somehow giving Trump the impression that little Zelensky could somehow survive without the U.S. If the U.S. decided to say, we are done, just like J.D. Vance said on the campaign trail, right, and continued to say when on his first European trip, and that, that was roundly lauded by real MAGA, by the populist MAGA. That was roundly lauded by everybody in that world. The neocons were pissed. Remember when J.D. Vance said all of that at the Munich Security Conference? And that actually, I think, I think it resonated really deeply with people in Moscow and at the Kremlin. Mm-hmm. And they thought, okay, I think, there are some people with more than 2 brain cells to rub together in Washington. These people have finally come. And then I think some neocon, some warmongers got into Trump's ear that's like, no, we got to do this. We got to do that. We got to keep this going for a little bit longer and figure out a deal rather than just pull the plug and just stop pouring good money after bad. I mean, I don't know where JD Vance is on this because he obviously he's a company man. He'll fall in line ultimately. We saw in the in the signal gate, he will fall in line behind the commander in chief, whatever the commander in chief says. So, but if you allow him to have his own thoughts, then I think
who even knows what that is.
Well, he's actually a really smart guy, right?
No, I know. No, I'm not saying he's stupid, but who knows what his thought is. He's one of those guys who, and look, I sympathize with JD because I came, from the same part of the country he did. He lies and says he's from Kentucky, but hashtag not true. He's from Southwestern Ohio, just like me.
Ohio, right.
Yeah. And from the same part of Ohio. And we both have the same trauma of watching the rust, the deindustrialization and the rust beltification of a place that was once an important part of American industry. We both, I mean, it's like I get where he's coming from. I really do. But, he came out of it, and some people come out of a situation like that. They go, like, he and I both went to Ivy League schools, right? He went to an Ivy League school and basically was like, I'm so desperate to make this work. I will suck up to anyone and say whatever it takes to get ahead. And then there's people like me who just don't really care about that kind of thing. But, I mean, the point is maybe he's smarter than I am. But the point is, he will say or do anything. If there was a Soviet revolution here in the United States tomorrow, he'd be wearing a hammer and sickle badge and a Mao cap on day one. I mean, the man's a chameleon. Okay, there's not a lot of moral or ideological center. Just saying. So when I'm saying that he doesn't know, I'm not saying he knows his true thoughts, but nobody else does. And it's like he'll just do whatever. Well, he'll do it. He's
that's like possible.
He's a lapdog. That's all.
But he did spill it a little bit at the Munich Security Conference early on in the first 10, 15 days of the administration. And I think that was a little inkling into the real JD Vance and what he thinks about this war. And I think that actually comports with the true MAGA populism that won Donald Trump this presidency, this second go. And I think Trump needs to go back to that because that impulse is right. Whatever he's trying to juggle now with whatever bad intel he's getting from like the likes of Keith Kellogg or some other shit ass, full bird general, colonel, whoever, they're giving him some shit ass advice because they are shit ass people that work for the military industrial complex and want to perpetuate the constant spending at the DOD. That is purely bad advice. I think that's what it's coming from. And to the fact that he has Keith Kellogg going back and forth to Moscow with Witkoff is ridiculous to me because those two are antithetical to one another. Like Witkoff wants to secure the end of this because he's tasked with, trying to end this war, trying to get negotiations moving. Keith Kellogg seems to have a completely different MO. This guy, Kellogg, is part of the DOD and wants that constant grift to keep flowing to his friends at Raytheon, at Boeing, just at General Dynamics, for example, with all their drone technology and shit. Mm-hmm. That's where Keith Kellogg wants the war to go. He wants it to continue so his friends at those war-making companies continue to profit. So I think
nothing wrong with
someone
that.
else needs to get into his ear. I feel like JD Vance has been very quiet and he needs to actually step in. He and Tulsi Gabbard.
He needs to step in on behalf of Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump has repeated his original sin of, appointing some douchebag neocons to his, yeah. Sure. So that, that's unfortunate. As they say, right? Personnel is policy. And it is.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Okay, then. All right. So let's keep going here. Through the war in Gaza has been going on for 18 months. And of course, Israel has been criticized by everyone, all sorts of foreign countries, aid groups, the International Criminal Court, and so on. There's even an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu. But it still was able to count on its closest allies like the US, the UK, and France. Well, things be starting to change. I guess it took long enough. Anyway, the US, the UK, and France are now more willing to place Israel under pressure. Israel, we've been talking to them. We want to see if we can stop that whole situation as quickly as possible. Trump told reporters in New Jersey before getting on board Air Force One. That's a big change for Trump when he's just only blamed Hamas rather than Israel for continuing the war. And he was always careful to be seen siding with Bibi. But this new change of heart followed the German government, which has always been a strong supporter of Israel. Don't get me started on the ironies here. Expressed unusually strong criticism of Israel's new attacks in Gaza. What the Israeli army is doing in the Gaza Strip right now, I honestly don't understand what the goal is in causing such suffering to the civilian population, said Friedrich Merz, new chancellor of Germany. Mr. Merz, that is the point, is to cause such suffering to the civilian population. Anyway, the German shift came days after a similar intervention from the new right-wing government of Italy, another ally of Israel that previously has always soft-pedaled criticism. Netanyahu must halt the raids on Gaza, that according to Antonio Tajani, foreign minister of Italy, in an interview posted on his ministry's website. We need an immediate ceasefire and the release of hostages by Hamas, which must leave Gaza. In turn, those comments followed a coordinated effort by Britain, Canada, and France to criticize Israel's decision to go even deeper and harder in Gaza. In a joint statement, those three countries said that the expansion of the war was wholly disproportionate. All three countries warned of concrete repercussions of Israel if Israel doesn't change course. And by the way, Manila, I've been reading Haaretz and some other Israeli media. The Israelis are interpreting this as France, Canada, and Britain as being countries that are now possibly going to think about imposing sanctions against Israel. And I don't know if that's overreading into what they're saying, but that's how the Israelis are interpreting it.
I've read similar reports that the Euros, in a strange about face, if it happens, of course, if it happens, might do that as a like no one's up until this point, and still even at this point, nobody has done anything to really stop Benjamin Netanyahu and his disgusting far right plans for genocide and just taking over the entire Gaza Strip. He has voiced exactly that, and somehow the Europeans are just covering their ears and going la 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 la. Mm-hmm. But suddenly now I'm curious about the timing. Why instantly this Memorial weekend that you have the new chancellor in Germany, Friedrich Merz, suddenly saying, "Oh, this is bad." That's never happened. And he's so fresh in his tenure that he's suddenly speaking out. And Giorgia Meloni, the funny thing is, right, the Germans, obviously, they have the German equivalent of America's white guilt. I mean, you guys know what white guilt is, right? Like here in the US, it's like we saw during the George Floyd protests, like all of these liberal Americans who are white had this sudden guilt about being born white, and somehow they're paying for sins of the father. So the Germans, I think, have their own German equivalent of that. Their equivalent.
We call that Hitler guilt.
But I mean, technically he was Austrian, so should they?
Yeah, but they took him in as if he were their own son.
Maybe. So they have a little bit of their Hitler guilt. So
richly
when it comes
deserved,
to,
I might add,
like, I get it. I get that, right? But at this point, that's fine if you want to have Hitler guilt towards Jews, then do really wonderful things to the Jewish German community, right? Like, Do something great to help them. It doesn't mean you should give the Israelis a free pass to do whatever the hell they want in Gaza. That's two different things. The Germans have no control over what's happening in Gaza. If you want to be nice to Jews, be nice to the Jews in your country. Do something great with the Jews in your country, in Germany. The least you can do is tell Bibi Netanyahu that, hey man, this isn't cool. I mean, at least say that much. And they really, up until right now, they literally haven't even done that, to be like, Bibi, you've killed a lot of people. When is enough enough? They haven't done that until right now. They have the power. They can, they do a lot of business. The Germans do a lot of business with a lot of Israeli companies, especially the tech companies. There are a lot of sanctions you can apply. The US does too, obviously. But the Germans have a lot in the way of business dealings that they can apply pressure on Jerusalem. And they just haven't. Same as the US. We just haven't. We do a lot of business with those tech companies. If you want to start somewhere, start there. Hit them in the pocket.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's for sure right. I mean, I guess the question is, this seems to me like it's a change of policy that's just beginning, right? Isn't that the way it strikes you? It's not like, I feel like it's not like, okay, we have officially decided to distance ourselves from the Israelis. We won't have anything more to do with them. This is not that. This is more like we're officially beginning to be annoyed, and we think you're going a little too far, right?
Okay, 1 second, Ted. We have a donation from Wandon in the Rumble chat. I'm not sure if Juan has a question or if Juan is asking about our email address, but I wanted to make sure I get that in there. Juan, if you're looking,
much appreciated.
Thank you for the donation. If you're looking for the email address, there it is. Email us, TMI Show question, singular, at yahoo.com. And Ted and I have been saying this for months. Email us and we will answer on Fridays. We will answer you directly during the live feed to the best of our ability, whatever your question is.
Manila, please give the email address. It's TMI Show question at yahoo.com.
I just did, and it's posted on the screen.
Okay, well, some people are listening. Some people aren't seeing. So you need to say it
I did. No, I said that. I said email us at
TMI. If people are driving, they're not going to write it down.
Ted has husband ears. He's my radio husband, so he hears selectively.
Yeah.
He hears selectively. Any man, at some point, if you become a husband somewhere in the course of your life, you gain this new affliction called husband ears, and it never goes away.
By the way, you have wife ears too.
No, we hear everything.
Oh, I don't know. Sometimes you'll repeat something I'll say right here.
I'll
say it, and then you'll say it as if I had not mentioned it.
No, I don't think so. Maybe I have once or twice.
No,
generally,
that even happened earlier in the show. I could find it. It did.
No.
It did.
Did not happen. No, did not happen.
It did.
Did not happen.
Uh-huh.
Did not happen. Not today. But anyway,
rumblers to the rescue. Chime in. Who's right, me or Manila? Someone's got to say.
What would I have repeated?
I don't remember what it was. Who cares? Doesn't matter.
So anyway, was that Juan's question? Was just what is the email address?
That's a pretty easy question to answer. Yeah,
Wandon, thank you so much for the donation and easy.
Joe Biden couldn't have answered that question, but anyone else could.
And then Ted, we have producer Robbie says we have an ad to get to, so
he would be so kind as to put it up in the
jump on
chat.
That.
I'll take care of that.
But yeah, there's not much else for us to say about Gaza. It's like the global South has condemned Benjamin Netanyahu.
True. All right, here we go. Here's the ad.
But
All right. Still haven't tried 1775 coffee? Here's your shot. 1775 starter kit just dropped. Only 1,000 units. You're getting the bold, dark roast that hits harder than a CNN fact check, the smooth, medium roast, and the Vitality mushroom coffee for clean energy and laser focus, no crash. All single origin, small batch, toxin free, and mold free. Plus, you're also getting a gold spoon clip because Freedom isn't scooped with plastic. Frother, strong enough to stir up your coffee and your mother-in-law's political opinions, in a black 1775 tumbler that says, I don't take life advice or caffeine from a woke sea witch. By the way, who's the sea witch they're talking about here? I want to know. Is it Hillary? Is it anyway? A $170 worth of coffee and gear, yours for $99. This is for the ones who've been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble, wondering if it's actually worth it. Spoiler, it is. Go to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab your starter kit before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does. Start your day with coffee that actually backs what you believe. Who's the sea witch?
Ted, it's a reference to the Starbucks cup lady.
Oh, I'm so dumb.
Ted,
I thought
you're a cartoonist.
I thought she was a mermaid, but she's kind of a
maybe
mermaid.
She
is
is.
it could be a sea witch, like a sea hag, like in Popeye.
That's right. So that's who they're referencing.
Or like in Zoolander, a merman.
Yeah, it's the woke.
Father,
I don't know.
I'm a merman. I'm not a mermaid.
Well, speaking of hags, Ted. Speaking of hags.
Oh my god.
Oh my god is right. Okay. I'm not going to describe this yet until after. Well, no, maybe we should, because if people are only listening, but
you have to. Plus, they probably heard something about it. If they're smart enough to listen to the show, they probably know about it.
If you guys missed it this weekend, so former colonizer France returns to Vietnam this weekend.
Back to the scene of the crime. Worked out so well the first time.
So Emmanuel Macron's do they call it something like Air Force One, like France One, or
I'm sure there's a name for that. I will grok that while you're talking.
Okay, so Emmanuel Macron, the presidential plane, rolls up to Vietnam, and Macron is standing at the doorway, ready to exit, waiting for them to open up the hatch. And just as they're opening it, the cameras are squarely on him. His wife happens to kind of like shove his face, like kind of smack, and you could see his facial reaction, kind of like a what the fuck? And then he turns around and realizes, oh my God, the door's open.
By the way, the official name of the French presidential plane is Cotam Unité, known as used as the air traffic control sign for any French Air Force aircraft carrying the President of France. It's an Airbus A330-200, registered as FRARF, which is often known as the French Air Force One. Just so you know, RF is La République Française. So I don't know what the RA is here, but
okay.
Anyway, yeah. So not as catchy as ours. Air Force One is a catchier name.
Is a cooler branding.
However, I bet the food's better on that one.
Oh, I'm sure. Okay, here it is. Okay, so for those who are watching, if you missed it, this is the slap that went around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, there it is. And look at his face. He's stunned.
Wow.
Huh?
That's
hello.
Thing. My abusive mom used to slap me across the face like that.
Is this a French? Okay,
it is a French thing.
No.
It's an older French sea witch thing to do.
You are the kid. This is Emmanuel Macron and his 70,000-year-old wife.
She's not that old.
She's like 75, and he's like 2 or 3 years older than me. He's like 46 or 47. She's like 75.
Is that true?
Yes.
I know she's significantly older than him. Do you think she's suffering from 40. Senility? Yeah, she's 72.
Okay, so here's the thing. So she's like my mom's, no, she's older than my mom, actually. So here's the thing. Emmanuel Macron's roughly my age. They met, we know this, they met when he was like 15 years old. She was his theater arts teacher. She was almost 40 years old. What I conclude is that she has groomed him his whole life, and she has abused him his whole life. I don't care how French it is that he was like the high school student that ends up marrying the teacher. I don't care about that, that angle of the love story. At the end of the day, he's a 15-year-old high school freshman, and this is a 40-year-old woman who's his teacher. The power imbalance, the age imbalance. This woman has groomed and has been abusing him since he was 15 years old. So we just got a glimpse of what this woman, how she like probably beats his ass behind closed doors. And we accidentally got a glimpse of it because you could see his reaction. I'm going to pause it. Look at his face like, oh shit, the door's open. He just has that moment where he's like, holy shit, they caught it. And then he tries to spin it and say, we were just horsing around.
We do it all the time. We're kinky that way. This is how we roll.
Yeah, trying to spin it. This to me is like just a little inside to what this relationship is probably like. He is 100% Brigitte's little bitch. But at the same time, he's also, I would say, a current adult victim of childhood grooming by this sexual predator. She's disgusting.
Well, Manila, I'm usually, up until now, I've been very much on team age gap here when it comes to the Macrons, because I've, fully transparent. I've always been attracted to older women. When I was 20, I had a 64-year-old girlfriend for a time.
What?
I did. So it was great. I highly recommend it. Benjamin Franklin has written about the advantages of when he was a young man of having a girlfriend who was like 3 times his age. So,
oh my God.
And it's hip these days. Okay. So up until now, I've always been like, I have a French attitude about this. The heart wants what the heart wants. The dick wants what the dick wants. We all have to just follow these things. And and basically, who cares? Nobody's business. Age is just a number. It was a scandal, by the way, in the little town where this all happened originally. And she had to leave. I mean, she had to basically, she would have been ridden out of town on a rail. The French are kind of conservative about stuff like that. They were pissed, especially in small towns. Anyway, long story short, this whole situation completely changes my mind, and I'm on Team Manila here. I think this is like, look, it's like, what would you tell, let's just say you had a daughter, she was 20, she told you that her boyfriend hit her one time. You'd be like, kick that asshole to the curb, maybe report him to the cops, never see him again, have nothing to do with him, block him on all your socials, right? That's what you'd say. It's no different here. I mean, she hit him. That's all we need to know. Maybe he hits her too. Point is, the relation that honestly, French social services should interfere. There should be social workers should step in here. The fact that he's the president of the republic doesn't change any of that. This is the country of equality, fraternity. And liberty. Equality is the number 2. Equality. Like, go in there and find out what the fuck is going on. If the president of the republic is getting the shit beaten out of him, by his wife, then he needs to be rescued from that situation. And it's a teachable moment. And as you know, I've been ranting for a long time about how there's no social services available and really no awareness or sympathy for the men who are abused. Statistically, men are abused by their wives or partners at the same rate as women are abused by theirs. You wouldn't think that was true, but it is true. And guess what number of beds there are in the entire United States for a man who's like being abused by his wife or his girlfriend?
Oh, like a male safe house?
Yeah, male safe house. 0 beds in the United States. Guess how many like in-person support groups there are for a man who's being verbally or physically abused by his wife or partner, that he can meet with other guys who are in the same situation. Heterosexual. There's some support for gay guys.
Sure.
Nothing. None. Nowhere.
Really?
You could be like, oh, well, there's one in Seattle. I'll fly there. No. There isn't a single one. There's like there's some online websites. Blow me. There's no support at all.
That's shocking.
And I really was hoping that the Amber Heard Johnny Depp situation
Yes.
would have helped to bring some awareness to this huge societal problem. And it's a big problem because, you know, obviously because of our culture, men are really ashamed of coming forward and saying like, yeah, my wife beats the shit out of me.
Well,
or
Bill Clinton,
my wife
I told this story.
My wife diminishes me, or, you know, calls
I
me
told
shitty
this
names.
story. Remember, Ted? I said when I was the editor of the magazine in Dubai, I interviewed a retired or former Secret Service man out there because he had put out a book or whatever, and he revealed that he had cause and reason to believe that Hillary Clinton beat the shit out of Bill Clinton repeatedly. I don't know if it's I mean, I guess there's a fine line between regularly and repeatedly, because I remember he used the word repeatedly. He had reason, he had cause to believe it was repeated abuse by Hillary Clinton. So this wouldn't be the first time that a powerful man was beat up by his wife, right? And if that is indeed what we're seeing, we don't know, obviously, but for him to try to spin it and say, oh, we're just horsing around, I don't buy it. The look on his face was absolute like, oh shit, and then
it's actually heartbreaking. I mean, I have to overlook the fact that he's like, you know, basically complicit in genocide in Gaza. But I mean, if you just look at him just there, I mean, he looks like a little boy who's been, you know, who's been abused, who is being abused and has been abused. It's actually really heartbreaking. And
he was groomed at 15
horrific.
As a high school freshman. If the roles were reversed and the theater teacher was a man diddling a 15-year-old girl, how the fuck would the world react to that? They wouldn't say, oh, it's a precious love story. It defies age. They would say, this man is a fucking pedophile. Throw him behind bars. The same should apply here. Just like we saw, Ted, in France, that horrific case of that 70-something-year-old lady who she found out her husband was like secretly drugging her. And it's just like that. It's disgusting. And I think this is something worth looking into, because this now validates a lot of things that a lot of people have said, that she has been a groomer ever since he was young. And now, you know, she's the first lady of France. I think there's evidence here. And I what I see is an abused man who it began as a child. And, you know, 40 years later, 30 years later, he's still in that place of being the 15-year-old boy that's getting abused by his 40-year-old teacher. That's what we're looking at. This is what I see. And then you see him try to smile after and like joke like, oh, hey,
I love this.
Hey, everybody.
We are horsing around and really joking with my wife, he said. It becomes sort of a geoplanetary catastrophe. It was a moment, his office said, it was a moment where the president and his wife were decompressing one last time before the start of the trip by horsing around. It's a moment of complicity. It's all that was needed to give ammunition to the conspiracy theorists. Brigitte, really? I mean, really? Really?
Come on, Brigitte.
I mean, come on. The French people aren't stupid. I mean, you know. Come on, we all know what this is here.
Like you said,
that's not decompression. That's recompression. Can you imagine? Like he's about to open the door to step down the stairs on a state visit. She slaps him at that moment. You know, even if they like to be, they're a little spicier than most, and they like to slap each other around. Not then. Not to mention, all the staff is there. This isn't bedroom shenanigans. This isn't him hanging from the ceiling in a red ball gag, you know, with a red ball gag, you know, like he's a Tory MP in the basement of a London apartment.
My God! This is
the president of the Republic of France. I mean, literally, they just opened the door and there's a tarmac full of TV cameras from all over the world, right, waiting for him. I mean, he probably has a handprint visible on his skin at this point.
She slaps and then puts a second hand on him and shoves his whole face, Ted. Something, I don't know what we witnessed. And then
by the way, I mean,
he
maybe
goes
she
away to
hits
the
him
other
too,
side.
but we don't know about that, right? We just know
Well,
what
look,
we know.
and there's the other part, right? Look, he emerges. Okay. So he goes away to the other side of the door. Brigitte's on the other left side of the door. He goes to the right side, and then they reappear. I guess he had to regain composure.
Yeah.
So that tells me that was not horsing around. That's not horsing around. You had
and look,
to
they're
go
not
to
holding
separate
hands.
sides.
Look at the body language. Not holding hands at all.
Plastered fake smiles. That was, to me, what I saw in my eyes, I saw that as abuse.
Oh, it is abuse. I mean, it's like, I kind of like, I mean, you know, look, this is not BDSM bullshit. You know, it's just not.
No.
It's sick. Look. And honestly, I mean, look, people laugh this stuff off. Like last week, in the wake of the Jake Tapper thing, the New York Post, you know, Murdoch Media reported that some gerontologist, I think in DC, filed a lawsuit or a formal complaint accusing Jill Biden and the family of like elder abuse of Joe Biden. And, you know, we're like, that's kind of funny. I mean, but actually it's kind of serious. And there is actually reason to believe that Joe Biden has been the victim of elder abuse here. And similarly, just because, you know, you're on top of the world, you're the president of one of the most important countries in the world, does not mean that like you can't be personally victimized. Yeah. And it's kind of amazing. It's just like, they're all just fucking people, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I remember, and it always stayed with me, that Secret Service man interview I did, you know, almost 20 years ago at this point. It always stuck with me, and it gave me a different perspective about what the position of power actually looked like, gender imbalances, power imbalances. That interview was really eye-opening to me, and it always stayed with me. And now seeing this, I heard that interview in my head all over again, you know, all those years ago from, you know, doing this interview in the Middle East, and it stuck. So all right. I think that's what we're looking at. Anyway,
we should move on. We have producer Robbie, who's going to be serving as our guest here.
Yes, but I'm going to play, instead of us introducing it, I'm going to let the Today Show introduce it.
All right. Are we going to be okay copyright wise? I hope so.
Robbie says no.
Don't do it.
It's a news segment.
Yeah, but it's the Today Show.
He says no. Okay.
Don't do it.
Okay, Ted, you introduce it then.
Okay, so I'll just read this, but basically, the broader sense here is that we all know that there's regional accents in the United States, right? There's Cajun accent in Louisiana. There's the Mainer accent that Stephen King's made famous. There's the Valley Girl accent in Southern California from your old neck of the woods. Like, oh my God. There's here in the New York area, which I'm very familiar with because I've lived here most of my life. There's regional dialects from Long Island and New Jersey, even within the 5 boroughs of New York City. There's a difference between
Philly.
There's a difference between a Bronx accent and a Brooklyn accent. There's different Brooklyn accents. So there's a lot of, you know, regional accents. And I would argue that one of the most distinct is the Southern accent. And there's, of course, obviously a bunch of different Southern accents, right? I mean, but what's super interesting about the Southern accent is, according to linguists, it's the closest to the English that was spoken by the British colonists when they came here. So, you know, it's gotten to the point where we view it as no longer standard, and it's considered outre. Dan Rather had a very New York accent when he was a young broadcaster on local television in New York. So he was sent out to Eastern Ohio, which, according to Strunk and White, has standard American English, or at least was considered at that time to have standard American English, to learn the quote unquote generic American voice that I am more or less have that voice, you know, but it's a little inflected with some Pennsylvania because I've lived in New York for so long. So
I think I have that voice. We considered it broadcast.
Great
broadcast
voice.
Speaking.
Yeah, yours like, it would be hard for someone to say. No one would say, "Oh, that's a California girl."
Well,
they might.
Here's a caveat. caveat is most native-born Californians actually talk like me. It's the transplants that go there chasing Hollywood and fame, like Paris Hilton, who is a New Yorker.
Oh my God.
And she brought, I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of the Valley Girl thing, but that was kind of a fad in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, most native-born Californians speak like I do. And I mean, sure, there are other little, pockets of people.
California is a big state. I mean,
but there's
a whole, hillbilly part of
there's
California.
vernacular, little
people
differences.
from Fresno. They're pretty hillbilly.
There are minor differences, but the
a lot of Dust Bowl people there.
My cadence and my generally the way I speak, most Californians kind of speak this way. But it's the people that are transplants from wherever the hell, like Paris Hilton, who grew up at the Waldorf Astoria in New York City. She somehow picked up, she brought with her this rich, ultra rich, like the voice crackle, and they talk like this.
Yeah, it's that breathy accent that you have to mostly go back to 1950s and 60s movies to see people talking that way. My agent is very old, and she still sounds like that. She's like got the grande dame kind of. It's great. Anyway, the point. So basically everything is becoming standardized and homogenized in American culture. And so anyway,
Robbie up here.
Let's get Robbie up here. So basically, there's increasingly homogenous. For example, even spelling wasn't completely standardized. For example, there were until the 1990s, there were two acceptable spellings of judgment, right? With one with one e, one with two e's, and that's no longer true. Computers and spell check have helped to homogenize all of that kind of stuff. Like really, if you look at books from 100 years ago, and newspapers, there's significant spelling variations. So the country, as it's become, as with the growth of the internet and of course, obviously television and radio, we've been increasingly tied together. And, I think it's obvious that if you're growing up in a place where you have a certain accent, and you watch national television, you watch TV, you watch the movies, you don't hear your accent, people talking like you very much. You're going to some of you will start to think, oh, maybe I should copy that quote unquote like national or official thing. But we do lose something in that, right? Like, so let me go through sort of the stuff here. So this study that you're referring to, Manila, was a study of Southern dialects among Black people in Atlanta. Atlanta is a very Black city, not universally. There's a lot of white people there too, but it's a very Black city. It's kind of like the capital.
It's very Hispanic now. I have to go there with my mother-in-law lives in Atlanta, and so you could turn on the radio stations and like every 1 out of 3 is playing Spanish music, and it's a very Spanish city now.
Super interesting, because I don't think most people who don't go there are very aware of that. So anyway, according to the study, during the Great Migration, which ran from 1910 to 1970, Southern Blacks moved to northern cities like here in New York, Detroit, Chicago, and so on. Their grandkids and great-grandkids have now moved back to places like Atlanta. They're more likely to be college educated and, of course, to have an inflection of Northern accents. Researchers find that Southern accents around Blacks dropped off with Gen Z, which is people born roughly between 1997 and 2012, according to this new study. And basically, about 5.8 million people have moved into the South from the North in the 2020s. It's a country of 330 million people, bear that in mind, but that's still significant. And so it dilutes the regional accents. And this is sort of the classic Southern drawl, particularly in Atlanta, is starting to go away. Younger people are adapting what they call a pan-regional accent, which is sort of like a California accent that was first noticed in the 1980s. So, for example, in Georgia, the Southern in words like beat, like but has largely faded among younger speakers and with flatter pronunciations. And like I said, more interconnectedness, homogenization, education, social mobility. It's also true that there are negative stereotypes about Southern accents. I remember one time when I was working in banking, we worked with a bunch of lawyers from all over the country, and my boss and I were making fun of this Southern lawyer that we dealt with. And I said, and finally one day I was adding up all his bills, and I said, that guy, you know how we always make fun of that guy from the South? And he's like, yeah. I go, he's fucking us. We think he's stupid, and he's billing us more than everyone else. We're the idiots. He's playing us, and he's taking advantage of our bias because we are underestimating his intelligence. So but that bias is for real. So it's
Robbie's nodding along.
Yeah. So anyway, so the question here is, I mean, obviously there's not much we can do about it. These are demographic changes. What are we losing, if anything, from if the Southern accent and like these other regional dialects, like, were to go away entirely? Would it really much matter? Or, I mean, or really, who cares if everyone who speaks American English pretty much sounds the same?
I mean, Robbie, look on the screen. You see that there.
Yep.
The stars and bars. You were very vocal about the statues coming down in the South. That was all representative of the South, and it's all coming down.
Yeah. Well, I mean, once you start tearing down the monuments and erasing the history, and then you start making the stereotypes, I mean, it does have an impact. It does. There's a reason why, like, even like the Bible talks about the importance of monuments, called about raising an Ebenezer. An Ebenezer is a monument. Remember the monuments from the old days. You remember where you come from. You remember who and what you are. And once that gets erased, all of a sudden the entire idea about what of collectivism, that you are a part of a greater whole, gets erased. And so at that point, what happens? It's kind of like we talked about before. What makes an American? Who the hell knows anymore? We have hyphenated Americans.
Well, but what about the argument that, like, in terms of collectivity, though, it's if we're all like a bunch of regional subcultures, then we don't have one unified national culture. I mean, that's been a concern that's been vocalized far more openly in France, which we were just talking about. France has like ethnic minorities that actually speak completely different languages. Like Provençal is not a dialect of French; it's its own language. Basque is not a dialect; it's its own language. In fact, it's the only member of its own linguistic group. Breton, same thing. And
so is Cajun.
The French government, ever since Napoleon, has tried to have radical centralization, and they've ruthlessly tried to crush these subcultures. They banned their ethnic uniforms and costumes. They banned the speaking of these languages. My mom talked about how if you spoke Breton in public school, she would be beaten by her teacher. Things have reversed a little bit.
It sounds very Ukrainian, doesn't it? Like if you're speaking Russian in Ukraine,
it's like that. It's exactly like that. Yeah. And in all the former Soviet republics, like in Kazakhstan, it's like, oh, they don't want you to speak Russian; they want you to speak Kazakh. Right. So, I mean, I guess the thing is, I understand both arguments personally. I tend to always favor letting people do what they want to do, not telling people what to do. But, I mean, does it matter? I mean, I think the idea was, shouldn't we all be Americans, and shouldn't Americans all kind of sound and look the same, or maybe not look the same, but.
Well, that's not how the country. Well, that's not how the country was founded, and that's a very modern idea. Kind of like how you and Manila were talking about this whole idea of total victory and completely annihilating an opponent in a war. That's a very new, a very American approach to warfare, especially in regards to Europe. When the United States was founded, it was set up with the idea of being separate, sovereign, independent states. Let's have states and not provinces, united under a federal system for regulation of commerce and the common defense. So if you then go and you erase that identity, then you no longer have a federal republic. You now have an empire that where everyone's is homogeneous, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone looks the same. Everyone thinks the same. Every problem is fixed by every problem is fixed by a hammer, because every problem is a nail. Well, that is completely at that point rejecting the entire idea.
That's more the Chinese model, like where, for example, they send ethnic Han Chinese colonists to Xinjiang to try to like, you know, flatten out the culture.
Well, we're doing the same thing. I mean, back when I was a kid, back in the 90s, for example, I could walk up and down Mobile Highway with a 22 rifle shooting squirrels for dinner. I mean, that's what you did. You go to school. After school, you get your dinner, and you go home, cook the squirrels on the grill, and hey, it was a good life. Now, though, we have these sophisticated Yankees who come down, and first they complain about the heat and how everything's a swamp. And then they start talking about how
they're getting with climate change. They're getting the southern climate anyway, right back at home in the north. Yeah. So don't worry.
Well, then, by God, they can stay there, Ted. But then you come down, and if you talk slow like I do, immediately they think that you're stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And then they start talking about how backwards you are.
Even though it is OG American English, it really is. No, Georgia is apparently the closest to the way that the white colonists in like the 1740s, 50s spoke. Yeah. I mean, it's obviously changed a bit, but you know, it's sort of like Quebecois is in Canada is closer to the way French was spoken 250 years ago in France than it is today. French has changed considerably.
Yeah.
Like I'm married to a Southerner. My in-laws have thick accents from rural Western North Carolina. They have thick accents, but
North Carolina is a lovely accent. Actually,
I find them charming, and I love my mother-in-law's. She has a soft, lilting Southern accent. She was a school librarian her whole life. She's got long white hair, and she's what you think of when you think of a little old Southern grandma. My mother-in-law is it, with that lovely. I find it a lovely, lilting Southern accent with a soft voice.
Absolutely. But if you talk to your husband, you never know it. You think he's a damn Yankee. And
that's right. He moved away when he was 18 and kind of washed it away.
And so that's a big part of it, right? Because if you want to be accepted, you know, into business or the military or something else, you can't sound like I do. Because either A, someone's going to think that you're a member of the Klan, or they're going to think that you're retarded, or number three, it's going to be both. I mean, that's the fact.
A retarded Klan member?
Wait, in the military? I always assumed that there were a lot of Southerners in the military.
Well, they are your infantry and stuff. But if you're trying to make a career, if you're trying to be a career man, you're not going to find a general who sounds like I do. I mean, let's be honest. You might find some dude wearing a dress, but you're going to find some guy who sounds like I do.
I mean, that's true. If you look at like Mattis and all those guys, they don't talk.
No, that's true.
No, and that's why. And so, you know, I mean, for example, I've had lots of people who come up to me and say, you know, Robbie, you talk really slow. I said, that's true, but I think really fast. And so that tends to help kind of balance things out. And I worked in retail in Manila. I mean, I had this lady from California, and I was trying to help her, and she just being rude and obnoxious the entire time. And I said something to her and said, well, sir, you have to understand, I come from someplace that has culture. I said, well, ma'am, I do too. I mean, so, you know, we had sushi 300 years ago. We just always called it bait. So, I mean, it is what it is. But I mean, to answer Ted's question, yeah, it's caused by a demographic change because you have people from California, New York, and other states. You import the third world. The rich, sophisticated white dudes and ladies don't want to be there anymore. So the whole white flight phenomenon kicks in. So where are you going to go? You're going to go to the South. And the problem is you're going to take that same elitist, liberal, open borders, just elitist crap. You're going to bring those politics with you to the place in which you're fleeing to then try and make it an image from where it is that you left. And that's the biggest problem. Like my hometown of Pensacola, if I was to go there today, it would look nothing like the city that I left back in 2010 to come here to Montana. It's completely different. The demographics are different. The city is like quadrupled in size. And you showed the picture earlier of the guy waving the Confederate flag. The Confederate cemetery was bulldozed down. It was erased. The memorial was pulled down from Palafox Street. My home no longer exists. It is no longer there. And so, I mean, Montana's where I am, but it's because there's no other place for me. This is it.
So you think the South has been erased effectively?
The cities definitely.
It's being erased. I think it's being
the cities are
erased is
small
more
towns.
accurate. Certainly not
small towns.
gone.
No, small towns. No, they're still there, but no big cities. Now, if you go to Raleigh, or if you go to Charleston, or Orlando, or Gainesville, New Orleans, I mean, those are not southern cities anymore. They haven't been for a very long time. And now,
I agree with that. And I was just in New Orleans less than a year ago. And
Atlanta.
We had Bill Clinton with the thickest Southern drawl you can think of, and people seem to like it.
Well, I can't speak to that. I mean, to me, the two of y'all have accents. Most people
everybody
here
has an accent. There's no such thing as having no accent. People think that, oh, I don't have an accent, but no,
you do.
I know Californians who think
else.
they don't have an accent. Like, no, everybody. It's an accent. You have it. The only question is, what accent do you have?
A lot of people here, you're going to come here to Montana in a couple of months, Ted. You're going to hear it firsthand. People here, a lot of them sound like Manila. I mean, they just sound.
Where in Montana?
Yeah.
Are they former Californians or
a crap ton of them? Like my town here, my town here in Kalispell, it's the same thing. I mean,
so
locals getting priced out, getting pushed away, and I mean, it is what it is. And you import the third world, you flee, and then you bring that crap here.
Robbie's told me before. I mean, this is what people think of. What's on the screen here? A bunch of middle-aged white dudes waving the stars and bars. And that this is what they think of when they think of the American South. And Robbie's brought to my attention that for true Southerners like he and his family that go back hundreds of years, like pre-Civil War era, that this is more of a representation of their culture,
yes,
Southern culture, than it is a representation of white racism or white nationalism. That's to them that's not what this means at all. And that the fact that these, the old flag has been effectively banned is part of the erasure of old American Southern culture.
Well, it's by design. I mean, the most conservative pocket, and I use the word conservative for lack of a better thing, probably traditional is probably a better word, of traditional values is in the American South. Well, if you want to break MAGA, then that's where you start, because the whole idea of states' rights, things like that, that's still a very Southern idea. And here in Montana, it's kind of weird. I imagine it's probably completely foreign there where y'all are. For example, it all comes from a jurisdiction of powers. Like, God is first, then your family, then your nation. Like that's the order. That's the order of importance and of authority. That's a very Southern idealism. Now it's more like what Ted was talking about. A one-size America where you resemble more of like a European state than what you do a union of sovereign states with different ideas. Like before the 17th Amendment, the state legislatures appointed the senators. The states themselves were a check on federal power. Senators were never supposed to be elected. That's why you had a House of Representatives.
That's more like the British system with the House of Lords.
Yeah, well, that's why the House of Representatives. That's why they have the power of the purse, and the Senate doesn't. It's because the Senate represented the sovereign state. The idea that the federal government is this master. I mean, that was not the original intent. The federal government was a creation of the state. It was originally set up to serve and protect the state. Yeah,
that's the nature of politics.
Whenever you lose wars, that's what happens.
Yeah.
Let's stay with the topic here, though, Robbie. As far as your culture, you feel that with I hesitate to say that we're doing away with the Southern accent as if it's like a deliberate act, because I think sometimes
it's not deliberate. It's not like the French thing, right? Where it was French for a long time, which, by the way, I want to be clear, this is no longer French government policy. They've changed it up, and actually now they value the tourist appeal and the diversity of the cultures inside the what used to be the French Empire. But that's there's never been a policy here in the U.S. to intentionally get rid of these regional accents. this is really due to technology.
It's demographics.
It's demographics. Yeah. It's there's increased mobility, which Robbie alluded to, Northerners moving to the South and having that influence. And then also it's, I do think communications and the fact that we're all, absorbing and watching, national news media and everything that has a certain approach, right? How many Southerners are on CNN? How many Southerners are even on Fox News? Very few. How many, and I mean, outside of the context of
as much as I hate Lindsey Graham, he does have the accent. So
sure. I mean, but that's because he represents a Southern state. But I mean, in terms of, just someone who's a national person. You mentioned Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton's pretty unusual. And actually, he doesn't have a very thick Southern accent anymore.
Really?
I don't think so. Not really. So I don't know. I mean, but I think it's cool if you're only listening and you're not watching. The video that Manila is running here shows all the food stuff. The cultural stuff is really worth talking about outside of language and politics too. I mean, come on. What would America be without Cajun cooking or Tex-Mex or all these other regional foods that are so awesome? Sure. Cheese curd from Wisconsin, chili from Southwestern Ohio. It's really cool to be able to say if I go to another part of the country, I'm going to actually see and eat things that are different than where I live and without going to another country. It encourages tourism domestically.
Ted,
it's good for the economy. It's a great thing.
George Carlin said, and this was in the late 90s or early 2000s, in one of his stand-up acts, he talks about the strip malling of the United States.
Yeah.
And everything is getting torn down to become one same strip mall.
Yeah,
You're always going to have McDonald's
everywhere. There's
there's always a McDonald's. There's always a Starbucks. There's always a Dunkin'. It's the same thing over and over and over. So what we're looking at here is somebody's video blog of
homogenization is truly a blight.
I think that's horrible. I think it's a horrible thing. And I love the South. I love the food. I personally think the culture, and some people might argue me and say that there is no culture in the South, but I would argue there is. That's distinctly different than what I witnessed growing up in California.
Oh, there's great music. Are you kidding?
Love it. Yeah. Are you kidding? Rock and roll and all that stuff came out of the South. So for people that, for as many, as Robbie says, as many Yankees who hate Southerners, we got a lot of what's mainstream American culture from the South. And I really hope that it doesn't go away, these regional accents. And I'm going to pose a question to you guys, and then we should probably get close to winding down.
Let me pose this question. One quick thing, Manila. It's not that we think that we're hated. Is that a lot of people who go down to the South think that we're backwards?
Yeah, we looked down upon, not hated, looked down upon.
So they look down on you as if you are, as if you're some panhandler out there on the street. So no, to use a Southernism, bless your little heart. Let me show you a better way. I mean, that's what it is. Mm-hmm. Now, as I talk about food, there's nothing more Southern than black-eyed peas. Back before the war, Northern aggression, black-eyed peas were only fed to livestock because they weren't considered to be fit for human consumption. The whole reason why people eat black-eyed peas now is that when Sherman went through and destroyed South Carolina and Georgia, they burned all the food, they burned all the crops, burned all the homes.
Wow.
But they did not burn black-eyed peas because they thought it was only good for livestock. Well, so to stave off starvation, start boiling black-eyed peas, start eating them. That's why black-eyed peas are a Southern staple on New Year's, because it's a promise for another day. Have another year that the Lord gave us something that we can survive, not starve to death, because this blood-sucking bastard just genocided a quarter of the country. So that's our black-eyed peas. Hurrah!
Here's my question to you boys, and obviously we're the three of us are from three very different places across this gigantic country that we call the United States. So where I'm from in SoCal in Los Angeles, I grew up in a school where it celebrated mostly Mexicans where I was. So it was primarily, if we're doing anything Hispanic or Latin American, it was specific to Mexican themed days, right? And
Cinco de
cultural
Mayo,
heritage.
all that stuff, yeah.
Yeah, the cultural heritage thing. And if it was Asian, it was primarily Chinese, because we have a huge, well, not huge, not relative to New York, but we have a huge Chinese population in Southern California, right? So there are parades for the, you know, for these particular cultures. There are you know, special things that are done, you know, at shops, at restaurants, or whatever, that celebrate these cultures. And there are schools that are set up so kids can learn Spanish and kids can learn Chinese. So my question is, why haven't Southerners, like true Southerners like Robbie, why hasn't something been set up to preserve your original culture? And I feel like if y'all did, and I do that on purpose, obviously, if y'all did, then it would somehow come off as a white racist thing.
Oh, 100%.
That's what I was going to say. I was just going to make that joke. There already is a thing like that. It was called the Klan. But, you know, I was not going to say that but then I did. But yeah, it would come off as racist. I mean, it's just like when we were talking about the stars and bars. I was like, well, you know, black people look at that and they think, yeah, that's the flag that was that was the flag of people who wanted to oppress us and not let us vote and you know, all that stuff. So.
Yeah, but there's also the flag. There's also the flag that thousands of black veterans of the Confederate Army served under willingly.
True. That's
so
true.
I mean,
that's true.
So the big part of the problem
complicated.
is that
shout out to Nerd. Thank you for the donation, Nerd.
Oh, thank you, Nerd. No, a big part of the problem is that Americans were functionally illiterate when it comes to our history. We know nothing. We have no idea about who and what we are. It's been pulled down. It's being destroyed as we speak. I submit to you it's by design. This whole idea of the melting pot, of everyone being together, everyone being the same, all cultures are the same. That is a very new thing that's maybe 10 minutes old. I mean, that's never throughout probably all of the country I could think of that tried it was the Persians and the Medes. That didn't work so well for them either. So it's to answer your question, it would be. I mean, you would be called a racist. You would be tarred and feathered, in public.
But there's a huge black population in the South. Like,
yeah, there is.
They're part of the culture too. Black Southern cooking is, I mean, some of my favorite food in the world is black Southern cooking, specifically black. Not,
I'm married to a
white
black
person,
woman.
Black Southern cooking.
I can write you a book. I mean, you know, and funny thing, you know, my son. His name is Thomas Jonathan. He is named after Stonewall Jackson. He is named after Thomas Jonathan Jackson of the Confederacy. And when people find that out, it breaks their brain. And it's like, well, why? I said, because where we come from, that's not a bad thing. I mean, people just automatically just assume it's because of the culture. Like if you look at that stupid rom-com, Sweet Home Alabama. I mean, that is part of that's part of the crap just pushed through, just trying to show that the South is backwards. Southerners, all we want to do is just sit up, drink beer. Newsflash, it's really Mountain Dew and Coke that we drink a lot of. And no, you're lazy, and you contribute nothing. You contribute no good thing. And there's nothing further from the truth. I mean, do I think what's happening is it deliberate? No. I mean, it happens. It's like there used to be, like in Southern Italy, the majority of people used to speak Greek. Greek's almost extinct now in Southern Italy, just because of demographics. People move in, people move out. I'm here in Montana. My kids don't sound like me. They sound like Montanans because that's all they know. That's their life.
Which is kind of neutral sounding.
Yeah. I mean, no, here, for example, if you go to the store, I get a buggy to go grocery shopping. And my wife's like,
buggy. I think the British say that.
And she's like, do you mean a cart? I said, no, I mean a buggy. I said what I meant. I mean, you can take a Southerner out of the South, but you can't take the South out of the Southerner.
And see, that's the British, and that's the British influence I'm talking about.
British,
I mean,
yeah.
The British influence on Southern American English is massive. And I don't think a lot of people are aware of that.
No,
yeah,
the big thing
I've got friends. Go ahead, Robbie. Finish your thought.
No, just the big thing is it going to change? Is the Southern accent ever going to completely die? No, because you're going to have small towns and stuff where people are going to to quote Obama, you have those bitter clingers. We're going to keep our accents. We're going to keep our Bibles. We're going to keep our guns. If you don't like it, they'll shoot you. Just don't come here.
God, guns, and gays.
That's what it is. But in the big cities, yeah, it's gone. The South that I grew up in is dead, and I think part of it's by design, because if you want to break the idea of American federalism, you got to break the South. The government's going to finish what Lincoln started, and how you do that? Well, with migration. There you go.
But I thought they said the South shall rise again. No,
it will when things fall apart, because ultimately the people who have the most guns and how to use them typically win fights. But until you get to that point, and I hope that we frankly never get there, because that terrifies me. We've talked about that before. It's I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen.
good point. Well, all this homogenization is annoying to me as well, because I used to love traveling because I saw different things that were different than Southern California. That was the whole point. Yeah. And when I lived in the Middle East, when I lived in Dubai, so I still have friends there. Some who are Aussie, and this particular family I'm talking about are Aussies. They had children in Dubai. And my two Aussie friends are very, very Aussie with the accent. I mean, very distinctly Aussie. And, they're not bogan Aussie, if anyone knows what that is, but they're very Australian. Their children that were born in the UAE sound indistinguishable from me. They sound like Americans. Like, you would never know that, one, they were born and raised in the Middle East. They're teenagers now. And two, that they have Aussie passports, but they sound like me, because, you can't get UAE citizenship unless you're blood or married into it. But they're Aussies, and they sound like me, and they were born and raised in the UAE. So I think that's a little bit of a bummer. I love talking to my girlfriend who, she has a thick Aussie accent. And if you get a few drinks in her, it gets completely, I can't understand a word that she's saying, but I think it's great.
When I went to Brazil, I did my best to speak Portuguese, and they appreciated the effort. And they told me that I sound like a drunk 2-year-old with a cat from an American cowboy movie. And they absolutely loved it. But
I people appreciate it when you make an effort. That's the thing. So I personally love accents. I hope they don't go away.
Oh, we have another ad.
Oh,
right,
how about that?
Let's read it and get out of here, because we've been doing this. We're 30 minutes over here. We should go.
Okay. Do you want me to read it, or you want me to send it to you, Ted?
I'll just send it to me. I'll read it fast.
See that? Right there. There's that New York
discriminating.
Well, that's because I think we should spend as little time talking about doing ads as possible. Ads should be slow. Think about it.
Okay.
Ted's
it's gone now.
discriminating.
We just lost it.
Oh, we lost it?
Yeah, we lost it.
While we were derping?
Yeah. That's
all right. All right. Well, sorry about that. All right.
That's fine.
Okay.
It is what it is.
So that's that. That is that. And
by the way, you want to hear a funny thing about just every now and then on New York local TV, like in local news, if they interview someone who has a thick black accent or a thick Southern accent, they'll show it with subtitles.
Oh my God.
And I'll be like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I understand them.
Well, the first time that me and VK talked to each other, we had to talk to each other about 4 or 5 minutes trying to figure out what the hell we were saying, because our accents are so different. I kid you not.
Used to, yeah.
Well, because he has that he speaks English with an Indian accent.
Yeah.
Well,
very charming also.
Well, no, I speak English with a very Southern accent. And so we could not understand each other at all.
And of course, also the Indians, they have in their English, they have some vocabulary that we don't have. Like, for example,
it's Britishisms.
But not even. There's stuff that's specifically India. Like, for example, of course, they have internalized racism, right? So about like that they've discriminated against the darker Indians. So I can't. She's dusky, as opposed to I prefer a girl who's fair. And it's like dusky.
I never heard that term.
Or like, we had a gala time. It's like, it's it's explanatory. It's self-explanatory, but it's like, I mean, it's great, but it's like different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Wherever they're from, whatever their accents, I
And
love
then there's
it.
weird shit about like the money, like a crore. Like, oh, I spent that house cost 15 crore, and you're like, what? So there's
it's like
this,
a grouping for the
yeah,
amount.
I think it's
forgot what it
10,000
is.
rupees or 100,
Yeah,
something like that. Anyway, I don't remember.
Yeah.
But
Lao language has that too, where I'm like, what? Well,
it would
I
be
don't
like,
how
well, it's
many-
the equivalent of grand, right? If you're a foreigner,
Right.
even if you learn English, it's like, what do you mean that house costs 100 grand?
10 grand, 100 grand.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. But that's the only thing I think. But anyway, yeah, I think I love that we should learn. I think we should all learn other people's isms, but not try to change them. And if anything, like try to embrace it when you go. I
Vive la
love it.
différence, I always say, really.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. There's
All
our
right.
email up there again, TMI Show question at yahoo.com. We're expecting a different kind of conversation on Friday, but we'll try to answer your email.
Please subscribe.
Hit subscribe, the like, the follow, all of that.
Share
We'll be back
us.
tomorrow.
Share us also.
Please do share us. We'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern. Thank you, guys. The whole show is here to say goodbye. Adios, amigos.
Bye,
What
y'all.
do you say, Robbie? Bye, y'all.
Bye. Bye, y'all.